For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
Violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the insurrection. I'm Michael Albert, and today I'm joined by Sharona Bishop, America's Mom, who you can find every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern right here on Ex America News, and two other very special guests, Jody and Ken Zitko from Unite for Freedom. Sharona, how you doing this morning?
Hey, good morning. Super, super good. Early morning. Lots going on. Very, very, very excited. I'm always looking for the silver lining. So today's going to be really interesting. Watching the Senate be pushed and pressed finally to do something so they could get their trillions of dollars for defense spending to protect our elections has been really interesting. So I guess we'll see. It always comes back to money.
Yep.
I guess we can pay off our Senate to make a decision about elections. So this is going to be an interesting show today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. It's amazing what it takes to get them to just do the right thing, especially something so basic. And as we're going to discuss here in our first story after we bring on our other guests, this is something America wants. I mean, this is one of the few things where the approval poll for it continues to go up, not down. And we still can't get John Thune or these other supposedly up to 10, we'll just call them trans Republicans. They identify as Republicans, but they're really just uniparty Democrats. To get them in gear to again, vote for something that we obviously need. And that's going to be the focus today, guys. We're not going to really be covering the headlines so much as we are election integrity and the effort there. Because both you and I, worked with Mike Lindell, that's how I left my career in staffing because of the 2020 election. I started working with Mike back when he was launching Lindell TV, when they did their first Thanks-a-thon. And my best friend, Annie Cyrus, she was already working for him and for Brandon House. And this is way back when it was just Diamond and Silk, Mike Lindell, Brandon House. And I think they might have had one or two other programs then, but they were, just in their infancy. And originally, they just needed some help cutting clips for the weekend. That was how I got involved, and Mike was pretty happy with the work I did after the Thanks-a-thon, and then they offered me a position cutting media clips there, so I jumped ship. But I mean, the whole reason I left is election integrity. Everybody that saw the 2020 election, I mean, anybody with two brain cells to rub together could tell at the very least there were some improprieties that went on. You don't have counting shut down in 7 states by accident simultaneously, or phantom water pipe breaks, or all the other just nonsense we saw. And then blocking any effort to look into things. The Uniparty clearly did not want Trump back. Now, ultimately, I do think that was a blessing in the long run. I think having the 2020 election stolen was what gave us a lot of the ammunition that we have now to fight for election integrity and really expose not just the deep state and the uniparty and how deep that cancer runs within our government, but also to inform the public. Everybody knows that there's massive problems right now, and part of the discontent we're seeing at the moment is because we can't get the people in D.C. to do the basic things that the people want, what we demand and what we voted for in the last election. And honestly, people's patience is wearing very thin. But I do want to go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Just really, really quickly on that caveat there on the American people as at large. That means Democrats and Republicans. I'm going to laugh so hard. I'm actually going to be quite disgusted, but it will give me a little chuckle if it ends up being the Democrats who get these amendments done and actually get the SAVE Act passed and these election amendments that are very, very critical to transparency in our elections. If it ends up falling to Jason Crow, I just can't even believe this is happening, to be quite honest with you. I just really can't. You've got Jason Crow. You've got out of Colorado, by the way. You've got Jim Himes out of Connecticut, and you have Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan from Pennsylvania. These are serious leftists who are actually offering something substantial to bring transparency to our election security and our election platforms. And if they end up being the reason that this gets passed through, I'm going to chuckle a little bit, but it does seem like they are more intent. However, I would say the trillions of dollars, how many trillions of dollars was the spending bill for defense?
Yeah.
There's so much more to those spending bills. I hope people understand there are cuts, there are percentages being paid out to Congress people and to senators via their PACs, their partners, LLCs, whatever it may be. So they've got a lot of motivation to get something done. But it is kind of funny watching the Democrats really swing hard at this one to be the heroes for election security.
Hey,
I'm troubled.
oh, yeah, I agree, but I'll take it. I'll take any victory we can get. Our other guests today, Ken and Jody Zitko, I really want to highlight the work you guys are doing. I was fortunate enough to be on to be introduced to you through another program I produced for Terry Newsom, Behind Enemy Lines, out of Chicago up there. And I kind of remembered seeing you guys on back in the day with Mike Lindell and On with Emerald over there, and all the work that you're doing there to expose a number of different things related to election integrity, voter fraud, and illicit voters. If you could give our audience a quick rundown on who you are and what UniteForFreedom.com is. And guys, go ahead and bookmark that website now. You're going to want to go to it and see all the work they've done.
Thanks, Mike. So Unite for Freedom is an all-volunteer organization. We're a national project working toward elections that are valid and certifiable, which they currently are not. We're not following the current state or federal laws.
Yeah.
We're looking for transparency, auditability, and results that can be proven. And that's really the biggest problem we're at right now. You know, this sort of really bubbled over in 2020. Everybody wanted evidence, proof, what happened. But if all the TDSers would pay attention, you know, he's in office now, but nobody's stopped fighting. We can't prove that Biden won in 2020. We can't prove that Trump won in 24. That's not the way it should be. We shouldn't have to trust the government.
Right.
Geez, just think of that, trusting the government. So, you know, that's just not how our elections are designed to work. So we're not going to rest until we get them corrected.
And I say most of our volunteers, you have different experiences as to why we're here. They're here. We have over 12,000 across the country, and we've done some analysis in 35 states. So we're pretty broadly evaluating this. And for us personally, you know, we sat like a lot of Americans watching what happened in the 2020 election. We didn't really understand it. Our backgrounds are data. So we're like, all right, something's up. It took us about a year to figure out how we could get involved. And sometime in early 22, we saw our own voting histories. And both of us had votes cast on our records in 10, 14, and 18 when we didn't go to midterms, because we didn't start voting in midterms till 22.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's put some fire under us. And from there, the rest is history from our perspective. But I would say most of our volunteers, whether they're poll watchers, election judges, or voters, have all had, you know, some variation of an experience, that things that make you go, right? And then they got involved.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of been like the bottom line for me is, at the very least, you know, if the people broadly do not trust the elections, then then our leadership no longer has the consent of the governed. That's a major problem. So at the very least, we need to go through and investigate these things. Like, obviously, in a country as large as ours, things are never going to be perfect. There is going to be individual cases of fraud, malfeasance, and wrongdoing, whether that's, you know, somebody in Hamtramck, Michigan, stuffing ballots in a box, or at a local election, or somebody, stealing mail-in ballots and sending them in for a neighbor or whatever. But it shouldn't be this broad of a problem. And that's kind of the path of the media and the Democrats largely, when they're at least discussing this, to continue to take, oh yeah, there's little incidents here and there, but it's not a major problem. However, reality tells us otherwise, especially over the last week or so. Now that we've seen in New Jersey and Michigan, it revealed that we have large numbers of illegal aliens on our voter rolls, and that a lot of them are voting. This problem is now confirmed to be linked to the motor voter rules. And again, I think this is only one piece of the puzzle. There's obviously many, in my opinion, large orchestrated efforts in order to steal our elections. And I want to remind everybody, it doesn't take that many votes a lot of times. Like just the number that we're talking about in New Jersey, these could have flipped a lot of local races, maybe even some very close federal elections. A lot of elections are determined between 1 and 3 points. They're much closer than people think. There are, of course, obviously runaway areas on both sides of the aisle. I mean, there's spots in California where, a Republican, no matter what we do or how much we clean up the elections, we're probably not winning San Francisco anytime soon. And the same can be said for Republicans. There's plenty of areas in Florida and Texas and other places that the Democrats are not likely to take a seat. But the problem is much bigger than that. So I'll go ahead and get us started here, because the first thing I do want to bring up is that Democrat voter suppression lie implodes as their own voters back a voter ID requirement. This story is kind of based around this recent poll that came out that are showing, again, growing support from even the Democrats' voter base, saying, hey, you know what? It would be nice to know if it's just U.S. citizens voting in our elections, and a growing number saying that, you know what? You should have to show up an ID, not just to register to vote. You should have to prove that you're an American citizen, but when you show up at the polls, you should also have to show an ID. In this poll, I think it was 63 or 64% of Democrats said yes, you should have to show an ID when you go in to cast your ballot. And again, I feel like this is pretty basic, that almost every country on earth at the bare minimum has this requirement. And the fact that now they're starting to lose some of the big Democrat pundits, like what's his name? The alligator man from Louisiana. It was Clinton's campaign manager. Even he's out there saying now, you know what, guys, we've lost this. We need to back the Republicans in this stupid fight. We look like fools. Let's just get behind the Save America Act, vote for voter ID, and at least then we'll be doing what our base wants.
Agreed.
There
I was just
So
gonna
here's
say
the
we
thing
have
I
a
think is really
compilation
interesting. Just
on
what
one of our I don't know, one of our pages that's like going back to the mid 2000s all the way through 2018. Democrat after Democrat calling for ID, basically calling for fair and free elections, the same conversations we're all having right now. Somehow, somewhere around 2018, that they silenced on that, but again, I think we all share that same common concern. I just think this has become such a partisan issue, and it's not, right? So,
Yeah,
I,
you're
I
right.
and I actually think it's not. I don't think it's a partisan issue anymore. I think that's the whole point. That there are still a
right,
few clingers
agreed.
who are, for whatever reason, holding on to electronic voting machines, who are refusing to acknowledge phantom voters or fake voters. I mean, the situation in New Jersey is hilarious. It's hysterical. You have a representative who is seriously denying the facts that the DOJ is investigating now. I can't remember how many phantom voters it was. I was trying to look it up. I was reading through that this morning for the
6,600 is what they found so
there
far, and they're expecting
there
more.
you go. And
Yeah,
this is
so
the
that's the
Department of
thing.
Justice. This is Harmeet Dillon. Okay, this isn't manufactured. This isn't conspiracy. Anybody who knows General Dillon knows she's not going to go after something she can't prove. She's just not.
Correct.
Once she
Exactly.
feels that there's no going forward, she's not going to do it. So to have her out there publicly, vocally saying we're going to get to the bottom of this, but then you have the representatives who are obviously there's something going on there. That's what we always, that's for me what always comes back to how in the world are they holding on to the narrative that there are no fake voters, there's no illegal voters, everything is great, gold standard, right? I'd love to see what you guys have on Colorado and even Texas. You guys are going to present some of your evidence on Texas today too. It's a weird disconnect, and to me, I believe it has probably some kind of financial tie to it. I really believe that at this point.
Yes.
Right. And we see the pattern all the time. Everybody's talking about non-citizen voters. So New Jersey comes forward and goes, oh, look, we found 6,600 people, but we fixed it. So stop looking at us, please. And then the DOJ comes forward and goes, oh, I think that number is more like 19,000. And now they've estimated it could get up to 35,000. Of course, that's what Trump is sharing is the 35,000 number. But we'll talk more about some numbers later. But those numbers are small. That's not what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and actually, I believe that 35,152 is what they've just confirmed so far, that it's exploded from the 6,000 to 35,152 non-citizens who are registered to vote just in New Jersey. And again, that is unacceptable. Now, originally out of the 6,600 that were discovered, 400 and some odd had been confirmed to have voted in the previous election. That number has gone way up too. However, I can't seem to find articles that agree on what that is. So we'll just leave it at, we'll say it's around 7,000. And that, again, that's just in one state. Which again is absolutely disgusting. This shouldn't be happening. And then on top of that, sorry guys, I'm flipping through these, but we also have up in Michigan, and I'm going to again keep in mind this is one county. Michigan County Clerk drops bombshell: 1,062 non-citizens found in jury pool list. 40 were registered to vote just in one county. So this illustrates we have a problem nationally. This isn't a one-off in one state. I know New Jersey tried to blame the private contractor, and sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the company all of a sudden, that handles transmitting the data from their DMVs or BMVs, whatever they call them up there, to the yes, and then over to their Secretary of State's office for then voter registration. They're saying, it was their fault, or it was a software glitch. Well, that isn't true. That's not what they're saying. That's not what the company's saying. Luckily, they actually had the cojones to come out there and defend themselves rather than just being a, good little deep state tool and keeping their mouth shut and taking the blame for something they were saying they didn't do. So this isn't an error. I am convinced this is by design. I think the work that Mike Lindell's doing and that you're doing and a number of others out there, the research, this proves it, beyond a shadow of a doubt. This is an orchestrated effort. This isn't a standalone complex. This isn't, a few bad actors in a few states here and there that stole some ballots or registered some homeless people or whatever. This is an effort to defraud the American people of their choice. And if we no longer are a democratic republic where the people are making the decision, as I said earlier, then they no longer have the consent of the governed.
Right. That's Eric you're talking about. And
yes,
Illinois is an Eric state as well. And it's really a systemic problem. Their agreement doesn't allow for transferring citizenship information. You're not allowed to include that. So, I don't know how you can call that anything but by design.
Right. And at some point, 46 states used Eric. I don't think it's that case anymore, but I mean, it's very few, but.
Maybe it doesn't, hopefully.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago.
We didn't agree to that though. We haven't voted on these policies of giving our information over to data companies who serve as third party in between the voter and the Secretary of State's office. There's no knowing what goes on between that clerk's office. And not to mention that many of the clerks didn't even know, they didn't even understand that there was a third party interfering in the election process. They didn't even know that information was being sent via a third party from their county to the state Secretary of State's office. Many didn't even know that. That's not what we're being told. We're being told they put it on a thumb drive, then they upload it directly to the Secretary of State. That is not true. So I think that's been surprising for people to figure out that nothing is what what has been said because of these contracts you're talking about that are completely secret between the machine companies and the Secretary of State's office. The clerks know nothing about it. They can't even review that. I remember when in Mesa County, for example, Clerk Tina Peters realized during the trusted build that the Secretary of State had password codes to her machines directly that they could go into. She had no idea. She didn't know they had passcodes. She didn't know they could get into her machines. She had no idea. And no clerks know this. So kind of going back to your evidence, let's take a look at what you guys have regarding, this is the first time that I'm hearing your guys' information today. I'd love to see, what you found in Illinois and also in the state of Texas. I'm very, very curious.
Sure.
Well, we'll start here with the first thing that you guys sent over. And this is the 2024 aggregate election validity score. So this is Uh, you looked at these states. Is this all 50 states, or you said this is data for 35 states? Sorry.
Yeah.
So this
The
is
blue
the total election error rate and total election errors by number. This is incredible. If you could give us a rundown on this real quick.
Yeah, so this is sort of summarizing the scorecard, which we'll look at next. So we've got sections of the scorecard that represent either invalid registrations or then of those registrations which voted, and then just simple count discrepancies. So the blue boxes on the left, we're seeing across the 35 states over 38 million registrations that have something wrong with them that should leave the clerks considering them to be either illegal or invalid for the illogical data that's contained on them. Of
Sure.
those 38 million, 20 million of them participated in the 2024 election. So that's 20 million votes coming from people with registrations that don't meet the legal standard just from the way they're being maintained to be registered. So it'd be like any other contract that you have that's incomplete or has errors on it, that should be invalid, but we don't take it that seriously. And then the 3.4 million is just embarrassing, sort of. That's simply the difference between the count that each state certified and the number of votes that are actually in their data. So there's 3.4 million votes discrepant between those two counts.
That's
And then,
incredible.
Yeah.
How
So
do you
that turns out to
certify
be
an
a
election like that?
17% error rate across those 35 states. And 17% is huge. People
Yeah.
don't win elections by 17%.
They don't.
So the error rate, if it exceeds the margin of victory, you can't know what happened in that election.
We the
And-
people can't know.
No, and that's basically 1 out of 5 votes is illegitimate. And again, there's no way to look at it. Now, out of that 38 point, sorry,
Illegitimately, I would say it from the terms of law, those votes are illegitimate legally.
Right.
yeah, and guys, if you want to get I know it's probably hard to see on the screen there for a lot of people watching, but you guys can find this data over at uniteforfreedom.com. Again, make sure you go there, bookmark it, and take a look at this. Go find your state on there. Here where I'm at in Ohio, we had 1,557,000. Sorry, this is really small on my screen too. 656 total election errors. That means 26.6% total election error rate. That's insane. What's the
Elections for you.
yeah? I mean, the error rate's supposed to be, what is it, like 0.003% is like the acceptable margin for error in most states. I know it's even more. What's that?
It's smaller. It's
Smaller.
0.00008. So 8/10,000%. 1 in 125,000 ballots can be bad for any given reason, invalid, illegal, a duplicate, or whatever. But that's a very small number. No one gets close.
But that number reflects what the law expects our elections are being upheld to, right? That's how important they are.
Unbelievable. All right, here we'll get into the Illinois general scorecard. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Trona.
Well, I am just kind of wondering, just before we get into the states individually, have you brought this information directly to secretaries of state or to clerk and recorders and shown them what your analysis has brought and walked them through how you achieve that analysis?
We have. So in 22, you're going to see a 24 scorecard based on the 24 election, but we did this after the 22 midterms as well. The 21 states, something like that.
Right.
This is way back. And during the 24 election season, all of our volunteers went, first of all, we mailed or hand delivered our findings to, depending on who the official was in the state. In some cases, it's the Secretary of State. In Illinois, we have a director of elections. They're the top person who certifies. So we brought, and this is important. We're not asserting fraud, because first of all, we just want to know what's going on with these records, right? We want to understand what's going on. So we brought it to all of the states. We did hear back in a couple states. And then beyond that, we actually sent something called our suspicious activity reports. So we sent it to everybody's state AG, their governor, Homeland Security, FBI, DOJ. And then we did it again here actually this past March on the 24 data, we did it again. We just sent out one letter letting them know what we were finding again. And here in Illinois, we did hear back, but we're taking more serious, and we can talk a little later about what we're doing next regarding this. But, they've been informed, they've been notified.
There's no excuse. I mean, that's the bottom line. They know what's going on, and again, as we stated earlier, this isn't a small number. If there was 1 out of 100 and some odd thousand votes, the 0.000008 number that you said, that's acceptable. There's going to be some human error. People are going to make mistakes. It's not automatically something nefarious. It could be, the 90-year-old woman that's volunteering in your local precinct, misreads somebody's name and checks off the wrong person. Things are going to happen. But this is systemic. This is total corruption, and that is absolutely unacceptable. This is by choice. They are choosing not to enforce the laws already on the books, and in my opinion, making it even worse. So I want to get to this next page that you have here. Illinois 2024 General Election Validity Scorecard. If we could break this down.
Sure. So this is what I was talking about. There's basically 4 sections here. 4 basic tenets that we use to evaluate an election. So the first one is just looking at the voter roll itself, and if there's any issues that we can see in the registrations that make it seem like they're either illogical, just don't make sense, or they're violations of the law. And so the law is pretty simple. Someone with multiple registrations or an incomplete address, because now we're using mail-in ballots nearly everywhere. So if you don't have a full address, how can I mail you a ballot? And that turns into, if I live in an apartment building and I haven't included my apartment number, the mailman just leaves my mail-in ballot in the lobby for whoever to grab. So, there's those sorts of situations, or just, as far as illogical, we have what appears to be the oldest registered person in Illinois, registered in January of 1903. And so if that were true, they'd be like 148 years old. But according to the registration, the person's 53. So, that's nonsense. If you were turning in something like that at work, your boss would be like, "What's the matter with you? Get out of here and fix this." But here, year after year, we see that same registration. It's like, oh, he's 148. Okay, great. So it's just, complete incompetence.
Right. Seems small, but then you start to look at the magnitude of the numbers and you're like, what is actually going on here?
Right, because that would be the invalid or illogical registration date. There's over 200,000 of those. That one example, but there's 200,000 of that thing alone. So then when we look at section 2, it's just a subset now from section 1, all of those that actually participated in the 24 elections. So we have almost 1.5 million violations represented. But sadly, some people have more than one problem on their registration, so it impacted just over 1 million votes. So again, like you said, this isn't an administrative issue. This isn't a fat finger. This isn't, an elderly clerk who doesn't see great and messed up here and there. This is a million mess ups. There's no logical explanation for that kind of magnitude. And then we go on to section 3. That's that simple count situation. So in Illinois, we certified 5,705,246 votes, but there were only 5,649,082 votes in the file that was provided to us by the same office that provides that certified total. So the same people who certify the vote provide us the data directly from the state. So this isn't our data. People love to respond that way. Oh, I don't know what's in your data. That's not our data. It's the state's data. And we're just running queries against it.
Right. They just sent a snapshot. It was only like 3 weeks after the election as well. So.
Oh, no. In Illinois, they don't allow you to see it until January. They have to work on it. It takes them almost.
They got to massage the numbers a little.
Exactly. They're not done fixing it until January, but then they'll let you see it. But it's still the very first version of data that reflects this election. Everything should be in there, and it's not. And then that last section is where we talk about that error rate. Based on the error rate in the 24 election, we were allowed to have 46 ballots that were screwed up. And of course, like I said, we had a little over 1 million. So not a near miss. We're just blowing that thing out of the park.
And
Yeah,
these are
that's
big
a
numbers. And people, I think a lot of people, their eyes sort of glaze over and they see this and they don't really, completely comprehend what we're talking about. But, we only have 9 million people that live in our state. So
Of voting age, right?
a voting age, it's just,
Jesus.
know,
That's
yep.
incredible. Sorry, Sharona, go ahead.
So so when do the sheriffs get involved? So I guess that's my next question. The data that you're presenting and you're compiling from the state's own official records, when you take that to the sheriffs, or have we taken to the sheriffs, have in your volunteer army across the country, have they taken this information to the sheriff's department and asked for an investigation? I remember early on when we were doing this kind of investigative stuff in my town, I ran a couple of elections. They didn't come out right. It was very weird. And obviously, it ended in one of the biggest stories of the last 5 years of election integrity and election security, and whether or not we're allowed to ask questions and can a clerk actually do her job. The answer would be no in Colorado or any blue state, really. The reality was they kept telling us that we needed to defer everything to the sheriff. The sheriff would be the one who would investigate, and then he would bring in the district attorney's office once he felt that there was enough evidence to prosecute. Have you guys been able to prosecute on any of these records that you have found? And have you been able to have you had physical boots on the ground canvassing? For example, the 103-year-old person, have we gone to their apartment or the house and met the person who's living there, supposedly under this name, to see exactly what's going on in real time? Because I know that's where the rubber really meets the road, right? It's one thing to have all the numbers in a big spreadsheet of data, which is amazing and it inspires interest. It's a whole nother thing to take that, break it down into local neighborhoods and houses, and actually send a person there. Have you guys been able to do that?
Right. There is so much I have to say in response to what you just
I can
asked.
answer the second part. You answer the first.
So I don't know which is which, but
Sure.
we did submit one of the suspicious activity reports, went to the police. So they did get the information, and in most cases they did not act on it at all. So the problem there is the media hype and chaos, where we've got, the mainstream narrative is there's nothing to see. Trump lost 80 lawsuits. They're just 2020 was the most secure election in history. We've got all these taglines that we have to overcome before people actually look at the data and take it seriously, despite the fact that the things we present are completely objective and come entirely from, hard data sets, and we could reproduce the results over and over again in front of anybody or in front of other analysts who'd like to evaluate what we've done. They don't even go to that step because the first response is, what do you mean? You're just an election denier.
Right.
So we have to get past that first.
Sounds familiar.
Riverside, California, I think in the news maybe earlier this year, there was some activity with the sheriff out there, and I know our data was used in that. So
that was part of the equation there.
Right. And then to answer that second part where you asked if we're actually canvassing, we don't encourage people going door to door at this point. But in 22, before Unite for Freedom existed, we had worked with a U.S. Senate candidate here in Illinois. That's how we learned about our own voting records. And then we created a voter history report, and we essentially canvassed 1,300 people here in Illinois. And 57% of those people had some kind of irregularity on their voting. We went back 20 years for them. It was just insane. I mean, and some of it was the registration date wasn't right or great, but like us, votes added when we didn't vote, votes missing when they did vote. They had people, we de-identified the data on the back of the report. So we would just tell them how many people were actively voting in their home. So we had empty nesters or people that always only lived alone or lived with someone else, and they had, additional people voting in their homes. And, there are other things it revealed, but that's what would quantify those irregularities. And I mean, it was overwhelming. We did that from like March and through June of 22, and we were exhausted because it was, people were shocked. I mean, we were shocked, but then we were absorbing some of that,
They were shocked, like emotional. They were, having
trembling.
Personal experiences like they had been robbed, that they had, now this became extremely personal for them.
Extremely visceral.
Right. We felt like their bartender. They come and they first tell us they were all worried about what we were going to see. So at
Right.
first they would give us all kinds of excuses of why they're not the kind of voter they wish they were and blah, blah, blah. And then we'd show them their history and then they'd be so upset that they're just, it was
Being
like I said,
used.
it was
Right.
quite a emotional burden.
There's a video that's circulated now for over a year and a half of a woman. It's a short video of her seeing her voter history. That was us. So, and it was the only video we actually captured during that time because it was so upsetting. We really felt a little like we were infringing on people's privacy if we were, videotaping that experience. But anyway,
Love to
it's
see
very
that.
real.
Love to see that. One of the first affidavits that I collected was within the first day of us doing canvassing, and it was by a Marine, a retired Marine, who had always done the. He'd never voted in person before, so he had retired, came to Grand Junction, Colorado, went in person for the first time in his entire adult life to cast his ballot, and someone had already cast his ballot for him. The clerk claimed it was just an error. Let me get you a new ballot. You can just go ahead and do a new ballot, which we all know that is not possible. The first ballot is the one that counts. And but at the time, to kind of speak to what you're saying too, the shock of, oh my gosh, this is actually happening, and not really knowing what to do about it. Thankfully, that's over. We all know what to do about it now. We can be more aggressive, knowing that the DOJ is behind us now. General Dillon is behind us now. We are getting serious action, and President Trump is not messing around anymore on the election front. He is just not. He's just had it. He's done what everybody asked him to do. He's done all the favors. He's done all the things. He endorsed Lindsey Graham. Boy, you had to swallow that one. And
Yeah.
and yet here we are. Thune still has not passed the SAVE Act. How critical do you guys think the SAVE Act really is to thwarting to thwarting the voter fraud? Because what we saw, like with Colorado, where they cleaned up the voter list only to put those illegal voters right back on again.
Yeah,
Yes, in
can't-
And which is
California.
very quick and possible and easy to do. Yeah, California too. I don't think I'm not sure why we're not understanding. It's very simple for them. They've saved the data. They just restore it.
Right. Well, part of the
So
problem
easy.
is the propaganda that thing happened in New Jersey a couple of days ago and that news hit.
Mhm.
And yesterday there was a press release from our elections here in Illinois, spokesperson saying they've only had 10 voters since what year?
1982. 10 non-citizens have
Voting.
voted in Illinois
Yes,
since
look at the Illinois data.
1982.
So that's, we're up against some ridiculous propaganda, right? And people, I think we are past it because I think most people are not believing that. But at the same time, I think, we all need to stand up in some form, in
Yeah.
terms of just taking this information, learning more, going out, understanding it, and then sharing it with friends, asking if other people are seeing this. And awareness is like 9/10 of the process here. I think you're right. DOJ is behind us. Trump is basically handing it to us. But I remember back in 2016 at his inauguration when he said he was giving the power back to the people. He quite literally meant that.
Yeah.
The power to do this is in our hands.
Right. And I would say the SAVE Act is
It's
an
important.
important step. It's not going to solve the problem. But
Correct.
It's a good step in the right direction, and it'll demonstrate, I think it'll be enough that if it turns out to be the only thing that happens for this election cycle, we'll see a difference.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's taking some huge steps. And the problem is there's a couple different versions of it floating around. So, we have to talk about the pieces. Proving you're
Yeah.
a citizen, voter ID, and eliminating mail-in ballots. If we actually did those three things, that would be a vast improvement over where we are right now.
Agreed. Yeah, and that is, I'm glad you brought up there are different versions of the SAVE Act, 'cause that's the other thing I keep hearing is the version that was included with this NDAA has no real teeth in it, that it has good recommendations, but it lacks consequences for states that are out of compliance and are not adhering to the, I suppose, spirit of the law. We've got very limited time, so I want to make sure we get to the phantom voters still. And then, I also want to meet this 150-year-old that's still voting in Illinois. I feel like we should introduce them to the Guinness Book of World Records and maybe get their thoughts on the Industrial Revolution and post-Civil War America. We could probably learn a lot there. But the other page that you sent in, this is the vote tampering report. Let's try to run through this real quick, and then I want to get to the phantom voters in Illinois and Texas.
Sure. So real quick here, this is essentially capturing the change to the vote records over time. and in particular after certification. So we can just continue to focus on 24. If you look at that
Whoa,
top
whoa. You
section,
said after certification. So after these are changes that occurred after they certified the election in Illinois.
right. So like if you just look at that top set of numbers for the 24 election, it's comparing two snapshots. That first one, January of 25, like I said, it takes till January for them to provide the data to us. So the very first set of data that reflected anything for the 2024 election compared to one very recent from May 13th of 26. So in that time, about a year and a half, this is the change that happened to the records that existed in the first snapshot for that election. So we have 100,000 people who had a vote on their record, but now they don't anymore. So they're still there. They're in both snapshots. And in January of 25, it looked like they participated in the election, but in May of 26, they no longer seem to have participated. Their vote history record is gone. And then we have 15,000 people. So that seems, mind blowing. Then we have 15,000 people who didn't participate, but for some reason, a year and a half later, they've somehow earned a vote in an election that you would think they didn't participate in, because according to the January data of 25, they had no vote. So that's what's going on the top. And then the bottom is vote records that come and go along with the whole voter. So like I said, in the top, the person exists in both snapshots. In the bottom, first they're there with a vote. 111,000 people are there in January and they voted, and by May of 26, they're gone. And then of course their vote record is gone, because that's the way all these states keep their data. If the voter disappears, they delete all of the vote records, which is ridiculous. There's not a corporation in the world who, if they lose a customer, they delete all the transactions that they had with that customer. They don't pretend like they never sold that person anything. They're not a customer anymore. But that's not the way we handle our elections.
I'm really
And then,
curious about that because federal law does require that they must save the vote records for at least 24 months
exactly. Well, that's
following an
part of the
election, or
purpose
22
of
months.
this
Right.
report.
Right. It's showing they're not,
Mhm.
following that retention law.
Right.
Mm-mm.
And
Mm-mm.
then that
So
last
all the way
17,000,
around,
right?
it,
That
it
last
seems like there's a few
17,000.
slam dunks for the feds, for the federal government, for the DOJ to jump on if they really wanted to.
Yep.
I think I'd love to tag General Dillon in this interview today with you guys and in Unite for Freedom. Are you guys on other social media platforms? I was looking you up on X. I didn't see you on there, but maybe you
Yeah,
are, and
we have an
I
X.
just
We do have an X account. It's at Unite #4 Freedom. So we
okay.
do have an X. We have posts. We do posts every day on there. We have that website, www.unite4freedom.com. So you can find us at both locations. We have an Instagram. We have a Facebook as well, if people prefer those socials.
We'll get it shared out for everybody too after the show, so our audience can be able to follow you and find your information a little easier. I know you got. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know if you could flip to the phantom voter, but.
Yep, that's what I'm going to do because I know we got a limited window here. Whoa, I don't know why that stretched out. Let me see if I can fix that. But go ahead.
Sure. So what this is showing is basically this is capturing all of the participating voters. So this is just people who cast a vote in 2024. We grabbed them. You can see there: Cook, DuPage, Kane, and Winnebago counties. We took all of those votes, 2.9 million votes, took a random sample from them, and then sent them to an organization, a commercial organization that does this kind of work. Evaluates people identities. They're the kind of organizations that support financial institutions or landlords when you need to verify someone's identity or prove that they're not committing fraud, or skip trace kind of thing where you're trying to track down somebody who's trying to hide, all that. So they have the tools to do this work, and they have the kind of insurance and appropriate coverage to handle this kind of data in an appropriate way. So they look at the records, and first they try to figure out, outside of the voter roll, is there any other government database, any other database anywhere that would be considered official where they could find this individual and prove that there's another version of them proving that they exist. You can see there 38,000 people in that data set. No,
Mm-hmm.
they do not. And then they look at the addresses that are associated with the voters. Are those addresses real? And they find another category of essentially failures. The addresses don't exist. So now what you have left is what appear to be real people and what appear to be real addresses. But now they have to determine, was that person actually at that address at the time of this election? And they see if they can prove that. So once they go through all of that, they have a remaining set of people who have passed all of these tests so far. Along the way, they would have discovered a social security number for them in the way that they're doing this work. So then they evaluate that social security number and determine, is it a real one and is it theirs? So if a person is determined to be real, they've made it through all of these checkpoints. And if they
Yeah.
don't make it through all of them, that's the ones that are in question. So the truth of how that works is we evaluate and learn that 14.9% of the voters did not prove to be, we couldn't verify them
Not real
Yeah.
people.
in one or more of those ways.
Right. And this stuff rolls back to some of the other stuff in the news, whether it's this medical fraud or we're finding all these fake people getting benefits, money, casting
Right.
votes. I mean, there's just phantoms all over the place. It's
Right.
Wow.
remarkable.
Wow.
Well, the level
What
of
about
corruption.
Texas?
Yes, that's what I have to say. The level of corruption in Illinois, honestly, as terrible as this is, doesn't surprise me. But Texas, on the other hand, this one surprises me.
Exactly. And then that's a part of the reason we didn't do this. This was because we had to work with this commercial organization. This was an expensive report for us to generate. So we don't have these for 35 states, but we have
Yeah.
them for a specific strategically selected set in an effort to demonstrate what the real numbers were for ourselves first. And then it makes a great tool to share in a conversation like this. Yes, just like you said, everybody goes, oh, of course, Illinois, that makes perfect sense. There's a bunch of crooks, which is nice. But
Yeah, it's the graveyard voting again.
Yes.
14.9% of those people are fake. I totally get it. But then you show them Texas, it's 14.2%. So practically the same statistic in a state that everybody thinks is all red and safe. And, that kind of thing just doesn't happen in Texas like it does in Illinois. But it turns out it does. And
I mean, this
that is a
this is
great
cr-
foundation for a conversation that the whole blue state, red state, that's not really even a valid conversation because we're not looking at real vote results.
No, I mean, this is insane. 3.8% of voters don't exist. 5.8% of voters in Texas are not in compliance. And again, some of that's probably legitimate errors, but you still can't let them vote until the errors are fixed. 1.3% social security number does not exist or is duplicate. So, that's going to be a lot of your illegal aliens and other people there that are using fake socials
Right.
or just, manipulated records. 3.3% vote missing a voter. So they counted a ballot, they counted a vote from somebody, but there's no person associated with it. I'm looking at you, Detroit, with your 2020 election where you said you could only account for 29 to 31% of the votes that took place in 2020. And I always forget whatever county Detroit's in. I mean,
This is wild. What are we supposed so in the end, from your perspective, what do we do? What do we do? What is the action that the ground game needs to take? As you said, Trump did restore the power back to the people. We have the ultimate say over our elections. We really do. What action should they be taking based off of this information? And what have you actually seen move the dial?
Right. Well, we always we're encouraging people that if they're the type of person who wants to roll up their sleeve and they want to get more involved, that they certainly, we're an all volunteer organization, so they can join. They'll learn more. We do things every week, whether we're on socials and doing an X space or a tactical training. We're very involved. We are also right now moving into our phase of legal action in multiple states. We've been mentoring. We have pro se litigants that are going on across the nation. So we know a lot about that. And I know it's been a recent conversation that a number of people working in this space have been working towards. We got the evidence. We're trying to take that forward and make something happen. We're a little nervous about 26. You can look at this data and understand that, hey, doesn't feel like we're in control of our elections. We need to do something. That's why the litigation is so essential right now. As Ken mentioned, this phantom voter report, we didn't do them in every state. We're all volunteer. we have no one single donor. We are small donations, 25, 50, 100. Occasionally we'll have someone that's very generous and send us $1,000, but so if you don't have the time, we say, lend us your treasure, donate some money so we can get this legal action going. Particularly if elections are passionate to you and this is something that resonates with you. And I think it should resonate with every American. But anyway, I just say, check us out and hopefully either join us in the fight, whether it's through support financially or through your support as a volunteer.
And be involved.
Get involved.
We need people to actually be out there speaking the truth. It feels like there's an army of people talking about how there's nothing to see here. It's not. It's a small number of people who are just very loud. So we don't have the volume. We don't have the platform to have that kind of volume. So we need a lot of voices speaking the real truth, who are willing to stand in the room and say this unpopular thing to make sure people understand what's really going on. And we need people to continue to vote, because we're going to get this fixed. And when it's fixed, we need people to participate.
We don't want people complacent and staying, the worst thing a person could do is see our evidence or hear someone else's research and say, I give up, and throw their hands and walk away, because we don't want anyone to feel left behind. I mean, we're on this journey to get this fixed.
And then the other piece, the last time we talked to Mike, we talked about the fact that we need candidates. We need good candidates to vote for.
Right.
So, and there's a shortage of those.
Well, again, I want to thank you guys. Yeah, sorry, Sharona, go ahead, and then I'll.
So much. No, I think this is extraordinary work. Thank you guys so much at the Lindell Offense Fund. Of course, we are always looking at and analyzing and seeing what's going on, but I love the way that you guys have put this together specifically for the states, and it's undeniable. It's undeniable. It reminds me so much of Dr. Frank, also just gathering up the cast vote records throughout the country and looking to see who was legitimate and who was not. You guys have done a beautiful, beautiful job. I encourage everybody to go check out your website, Unite for Freedom, and support what you're doing. But more so, like you said, get involved. And we
100%.
almost, you almost could vote just for evidence sake, because you never know. They don't know. It's a roll of the dice whose accounts they're messing with and whose vote they're messing with.
Back to getting out there and voting. If you don't vote, we're proof that they might just use your record to vote for you. You got to protect your vote. Go vote.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know you two have to run. I would like to bring you guys back on here in the future. Maybe we'll get Dr. Frank on with this. Really what we need to do is we need to do something maybe on a weekend, get a lot of experts like you, maybe get Mike Lindell on here as well to kind of go through all this, because this is a fight we have to win. If we want to save this country, it's going to take action from people like us. Obviously, the people in D.C. could care less about this, most of them. They like this broken, corrupt system. I keep hearing this rumor that there's 6 senators seated right now. I'm looking at you, Joel Ossoff, and I just blanked on the other guy's name from Georgia. Man, sorry, my brain is not functioning this morning. Raphael Warnock. I'm looking at you two, and apparently 4 others that are there due to illegitimate votes, and I believe that 100%. I'd like to know how many are in the House for illegal due to illegal votes. But they are not going to change a corrupt system which benefits them or lines their pockets with cash. So it's going to be up to us to force this issue through. Guys, I want to thank all of you for being here. Sharona, Jody, Ken, all of you, thank you for joining us here today. To our audience, thank you for being here. And this is, it's important that you share out episodes like this. Send it to your neighbors, other people that are interested in this and want to get involved. Share this episode. Tell them, look, this is the real problem with our elections. It's not just voter ID and verifying U.S. citizenships. This is a systemic problem that runs much deeper, and we have the data to prove it. Ignore this uniparty propaganda nonsense that you hear from these operatives masquerading as journalists in our media or from politicians. They are not going to tell you the truth if they benefit from a corrupt system or the dollars are telling them to say that. So guys, thank you for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. And we'll be back on Monday with even more. Thanks again, guys.